Welcome to the Realty Plus Real Talk series, where we talk to industry experts to know their honest views and opinions and real facts and figures. And today we have with us Mr. Pradeep Lala, MD and CEO, Embassy Services Private Limited, and Quaiser Parvez, CEO of Nucleus Office Parks, which is a 100% Blackstone portfolio company. And as we were just mentioning, this is the right time when we know organizations are now slowly bringing back employees to offices. There are expectations of higher leasing momentum in commercial offices. And most importantly, there is a greater focus on health, hygiene, and wellness at workplaces. So, Mr. Parvez, my first question would be to you. Nucleus Office Parks, in fact, had recently received the Sword of Honor by British Safety Council, where the emphasis is on higher standards for health, safety, and environmental practices. And this is where property management becomes a big factor. So what were your expectations when you were finalizing on a property management partner for your commercial office parks?
So I think the sort of, I'll take a step back and, if you really look at COVID, I think COVID snowballed a kind of a new chapter in how you reposition the assets, because there was varying expectations and the expectations of the occupiers changed dramatically. I think cut to in the last 2 years, if you really look at it, the difference between the grade A asset and the grade B asset has completely far widened, right? And obviously there is an increasing focus on health, well-being considerations, and so on. I think particularly when we are looking at finalization, I think the basis which we probably look at is that how do you really have a partner who can sort of provide you with better operational framework in terms of making sure that how is data available to you, and obviously the accuracy of the data. So that's really number one. The number two is obviously sort of understand that how do you really create a better operating margin, both in terms of cost and convenience. That's really a prime consideration. The third one, we always look at is, and a lot of buildings has always been saying that we need to create a hotel-like experience in the building. But I think what we really gun for is to ensure how do we have a superior and a consistent customer experience across all the buildings. And particularly in our case, when we have that geographical spread, we want to make sure that there's a consistent experience across all our buildings and so on. And last but not the least, the ability of the partner to really create a signature culture in the building around health, well-being, and safety, because that is really the buzzword and needless to say, a very, very important expectation from the occupiers. So I think these are the four big expectations which we look at from partners such as ESPL.
Okay, fantastic. So, Mr. Lala, we come to you as Mr. Parvez mentioned his expectations, and that is what they were looking at, given the entire change scenario and the occupiers' demands. So how did you align your goals to meet these demands of Nucleus Office Parks?
So I think we are a little fortunate being a part of the Embassy Group that we understand the Blackstone philosophy, which extends down to the Nucleus Office Parks philosophy today. And most importantly is we look at ourselves as being their partners of Nucleus Office Parks, and more so partners in progress. And while whatever Quaiser has mentioned earlier now about what he was looking at from a vendor partner, I think we, over the years that we worked along with Quaiser and the team, we've understood the requirements and we've aligned with their requirements. So we contribute to them in all these aspects of enhancing the user experience, bringing in more, efficiencies in the buildings that we maintain for them. And most importantly, what we've seen in Nucleus Office Parks is a willing investor into the user experience and into the enhancement of the asset life cycle and the assets. From that perspective, whether it's ESG goals, whether it's protocols related to the pandemic, whether it's tenant engagement or any kind of pain points that they can pass over to us, we've been aligning ourselves with them. And also more importantly, we've not restricted ourselves to a template of a scope. I mean, wherever possible, we've extended our services, extended our support to ensure that the entire goal of Nucleus office parks is achieved. And I think the real reflection of this relationship is that over the years, the last 2-3 years that we've been working with them, they've been increasing our scope of work. They've been increasing the assets that we have. And that reflects that in real truth is a validation of our relationship being more stronger.
That's correct. Mr. Parvez, coming back to you, you mentioned about how, the demand from commercial office spaces had changed given the background of the pandemic. What are the future shifts, do you think, in the occupiers' demands, and how is Nucleus Office Parks equipping itself to, to address those change or the shifts in the occupiers' demands in future?
Just before I answer that, and I think I completely agree with Pradeep. I think, if you really make an analogy, occupiers expect a certain degree of cohesion from us in terms of how do our goals really sort of connect with the occupier, right? When they come to us, they expect that there is some amount of resonance on their ESG goals with us. Similarly, when we look at firms such as ESPL, there is a huge amount of resonance in terms of what we stand for and what ESPL stands for. So I think that resonance is also one of the very important bases for us to sort of continue to spread the relationship. Having said that, I think what we really see is the new age occupiers, besides expecting possibly everything, right? I think the keywords are they are obviously looking at the sincere attempt from the property managers, managers and the building owners to humanize the buildings, right? So I think that's something which a lot of people are expecting. I think a lot has been said on the amenitization expectation of the but I think that whole scale is shifting to what really the focus is shifting to the user of the office. A lot of occupiers are wondering, and employers are wondering, how does the building cater to the needs of the workforce itself, right? Health and well-being, I think, is a very basic expectation now. And if you really again extrapolate this, you have roughly about 800 million square feet of office space in the country, right? With a vacancy of about 17 to 18%, and you have the new stock coming up by about 30-40 million square feet every year, right? So which occupiers continue to have a choice of newer buildings. So for the older buildings to have that competitive advantage, you will have to really up your game and amp up your service offering in terms of technology enablement. You will have to amp up your services in terms of amenitization. You will have to amp up how do you really resonate with the ESG goals of our occupiers. For us, very large and established firms have started qualifying options on the basis of how does the building meet their ESG goals. And largely because for a big way, real estate continues to be a big sort of driver on the whole carbon piece and so on. But having said that, I think there is a new term which is sort of coming in with all the chatter around work from home. Employers are trying hard to earn the commute to office, and I think building owners and definitely building managers share the responsibility of earning that commute. And earning that commute really means in terms of how do you amp up your level of offerings within the building. I think largely, everybody's expecting a very net better effect, so to say.
Some very key words, Mr. Parvez, you mentioned humanizing the buildings. That is what it is. More than the amenitizing of the workspaces, it is the health and wellness now, which you guys mentioned is the basic that is being expected. And how do you earn the commute? How the people or the workforce would be doing, how do you make them come back to the work? They would want to come back to the work and make those workspaces work for them as an experience, not just as a workplace. Mr. Lala, what do you have to say on that? Firstly, what Mr. Parvez mentioned, and secondly, as from the other side, from developers' point of view, so how are you addressing the concerns of the developers of the properties? How are you addressing and aligning with them?
I think I agree with the word that Quaiser uses about humanizing the building. And truly, if you say the pre-pandemic and the post-pandemic are two sequences in the entire last 3-4 years that we've been through this whole pandemic, what we've understood that the expectations today are very dynamic and they have grown much higher in the eyes of the user experience. From that perspective, what I would say is that we as partners or partners to all property services partners to all landlords and building owners, we have to keep updating our knowledge about how we can enhance the user experience, how we can enhance the well-being and the comfort factor of back to work. So that is a process which is ever improving, and it's not a goal, it's not a destination, it's something that keeps moving over a period of time. And that we work with our developer partners everywhere and bring in improvements as the day goes by. From a future of buildings and assets from a developer perspective, pre-pandemic, most important was to give a good, efficient building and enhance the maximum, commercial viability from that building. Today, what developers have realized that it's not limited only to efficiencies of space and commercial viability, but it's also to bring in the user experience and the comfort levels of the occupiers. From that perspective, what we do, and we have the fortune of working with our own parent MC Group, our contributions in bringing in more enhancements in the development at the base build level from a perspective of, let's say, ESG goals, people with physical disabilities. We ensure that whatever can be brought into a base build and those developments are done. So while a developer would let's say budget anywhere between 3,000 to 5,000 rupees in terms of base build, a little bit of technology intervention or at the development stage, a little bit of ESG, like green buildings, more green spaces in a campus, all that would just increase the cost by a bare minimum of about 50 to 100 rupees. But that contributes very highly today to bring in that expectation of a person walking into the campus and thinking that, okay, I'm walking into a safe campus, which does not only drive ESG goals, it does drive sustainability. At the same time, the tenants who come into that building understand very well that the utility efficiencies are to the maximum. You've got enough of green spaces to move around with, and it's more of a community feel. And we contribute by whatever knowledge we have to the developer fraternity and bring in our knowledge and work with them as partners and ensure that these are installed into the buildings at the base build level.
That's right. So, what Mr. Pradeep Lala is saying, more than the commercialization, which was there earlier, the commercial efficiency of the property, now it's more about the holistic, overall holistic well-being and, the outcome of the building and its maintenance. And one, takeaway from the conversation till now is the synergy between the property managers and the property owners. That is one of the key factors if we are looking at a holistic commercial office spaces. Mr. Parvez, what would be the top two initiatives, if you would want to, highlight the top two initiatives that you had taken during this pandemic and the post-pandemic period for the commercial office spaces, the nucleus office parks?
Just to sort of take a leaf from what Pradeep said last, and I think that's really a trend which we have started seeing in all our conversation with the occupiers. A lot of people are focusing on the value than the pricing. Right? Earlier, the pricing was really the game changer in all conversation, but I think the focus on value is far more than what probably pricing would in all the new leasing momentum. But with that really being said, really when the health, well-being, and the safety as a conversation, became really a key expectation when at the start of COVID. We started really thinking about it, that is there even a possibility, or is there even a term, something like an accident-free workplace? Is that even possible? I optimistically and obviously rather wishfully think that it probably would be, but I think the fact of the matter is that mistakes happen and people do mistakes, and we all are people, right? Amplify that with our geographical spread, with the amount of people which is working in our parks, and the number of people who is sort of really making it happen in our parks, the level of complication increases very significantly. And I think that really gave us an opportunity to sort of subscribe to British Safety Council, which is really gold standard on health and safety. And I think that, what it really did to us is two things. One, it set up a standard process, checks and balances, and a response mechanism across the board. But more importantly, it sort of really set up in helping a mindset for safety, because I doubt if just getting a certification or just getting a COVID assurance statement is enough. I think setting up a mindset is more important. I think for us, the journey started about 10 months back. Uh, Thus far, we've invested about 18,000 hours and counting in just creating awareness and learning and development around safety and around health. And I think that's really a culmination point for us in terms of how do we make sure that the 2,000 frontline staff who manages our building all across the country feel and breathe the same ethos around health and safety and well-being as we feel with our partners and with our parent and as a firm level. And making sure that synergy works around that thing was to make sure that we subscribe to a standard protocol. And subscription to British Safety Council was a huge vindication. Our confidence got emboldened when we got the 5-star rated. And I think, and then obviously with the help of the team ESPL and our other partners, we also won the much coveted Sword of Honor. I think that was one of the ways how we really saw the scales tilting to what the occupiers were asking for. And that also started becoming a big differentiator for us.
Right, right.
Yeah.
So first is the what you said is the mindset, the accident-free workspace. First, the mindset, the awareness, and then the standardization of all the processes is obviously, as Mr. Parvez said, the most critical factors now, which are kind of creating a differentiation for the nucleus office parks. Mr. Pradeep, Lala, like Mr. Parvez mentioned, that again, it is the partners who have to all work together if you want to reach that goal. So how was your contribution, or how you made it a reality with these business parks?
So it's once again the same word of being partners in progress and always being 2 steps behind the asset owner or the landlord of the asset, ensuring that whatever are their pain points, whichever they can pass down to us.
What would be the 2 steps that you would like to highlight, the 2 most critical steps in your journey with the nucleus office parks?
One, definitely our success that we contributed, and we were supporting them in achieving the 5-star and the Sword of Honor. I think that was a great achievement from both teams, and even the third partner that Nucleus has on board. I think that was a challenge which Quaiser took, which was at one point of time a hope in heaven, but I guess we achieved it at earth, and we're all smiling about it right now. I think that's one. And most importantly, over this last couple of years that we've had this pandemic, while occupiers were not in office, between the 2 teams, we've created that partnership and that cohesiveness that we can bring in comfort levels and bring in safety protocols together to ensure that the back to office is much more seamless. And I can tell you, we do a lot of commercial office across the country for various clients of ours. And what we found in Nucleus Office Parks is a partner who's always willing to bring in any kind of investment to bring in the user comfort level and the satisfaction of the tenants. And from that perspective, I'll confess honestly that the maximum traction of back to work we have seen has been in the Nucleus Office Parks as a percentage across the country. That itself is a clear validation of how they contribute to the user experience, and they understand tenant expectations.
That's fantastic. So once you create that kind of partnership, once you understand the requirements of the environment that is around, once, and you create the awareness among all the stakeholders, I think that's the recipe for success. Mr. Parvez, again, going a little back, the past 2 years had been kind of a health crisis globally. What would your, as a commercial office provider, were the 2 main learnings that you took from those past 2 years? What were your key takeaways, and which kind of are creating opportunities for the company now?
I think the narrative did not really change. I think one of the key things which I think Pradeep said, and you obviously resonated, was partnership is equal to understanding, right? So unless you really understand your partners, be it in terms of who's your service partner or your customers, right? You can't possibly claim to be in partnership. So obviously having a deeper understanding. So two things which really came out as a big learning for us was really the fact that don't look at your occupier in the traditional way of a landlord and a tenant. I think that whole relationship equation has got completely eclipsed. That's not the way an occupier would like the landlords to see, and that's not really the way landlords can afford to look at the occupier. So it's definitely a much deeper level of tenant engagement. Tenant engagement in many ways also has become a differentiator. So that's really number one. The number two is flexibility, right? Flexibility in the way what you really thought was a standard pre-COVID is not the standard anymore, right? Because each occupier is looking at real estate very differently, with the whole advent of real estate as a service versus real estate as a product before absolutely before COVID is very different. And the moment you start looking at it through the lens of service is when you start looking at it in terms of what are the new flexibilities you need to offer to the customer, right? And the third one is really traditionally landlord and the occupier, the relationship was always B2B. Now I think with the whole COVID situation, how that relationship has really moved from B2B to B2C, right? And how do you really focus on the users of the office is something a lot of landlords will have to take care of. So flexibility, focus of the relationship from B2B to B2C, and a far more deeper understanding of the occupiers in terms of tenant engagement are the key things, I think, our themes which we would like to focus on as we go forward.
Okay, fantastic. So the entire relationship between the landlord and the tenants has changed. The flexibility, the entire real estate now not as a product but as a service has come into focus. And again, from B2B now B2C, now landowners are now directly concerned about the occupiers or the occupants who would be using these offices. So fantastic. So these are the key takeaways for Mr. Parvez. Mr. Pradeep, Lala, what would you like to add? What had been your key takeaways from the health crisis that we have been through and still are in?
I think I'll just add one word to what Quaiser just mentioned about the relationship between the landlord and the user or the occupier, is that as a property services provider, our goal would actually be there to be the bridge between the expectations of both entities. So if there is a continuous engagement between the landlord and the occupier, someone has to deliver the expectation. And our goal as property services partners would be to be that bridge and ensure that whatever communicates between these two larger entities, we are that bridge to bring in that level of service and level of enhancement of the user experience. And at the same time, ensure that not only does that help the user to feel more satisfied, but that also enhances the asset value and brings in more commercial viability to the landlord of that asset. From the learnings, I think the whole shift has changed from commercial viability and more efficiencies in bringing in space management and this to more of wellness, ESG, ensuring client satisfaction. And the focus is now more on the user. And of course, that is being driven not only through all the regular protocols, the certifications, and more of engagement, but also through technology. And we as ESPL work a lot in that direction. And we've been trying to bring in more analytics into the entire service of property management. At the same time, this whole thing is that if you provide all the expectations today of the occupier and the user and give them all their tick off in the boxes like wellness, social distancing, the right protocols, and make sure that space management is efficient. When you do that, the natural extension of this is customer satisfaction, which ultimately goes to the landlord as commercial viability and enhancing more margins and revenues. So I think rather than going from a direction of commercial viability to user experience, it's the whole path has changed from user experience to a commercial viability.
Okay.
And that's the focus shift. And I think the landlords like Nucleus Office Parks, who are very futuristic, understand that. And what I can tell you is that from their business goals, I'm sure it's more that they are investor driven and they have to provide returns to their investors. But they've understood, and I can tell you they are leaders in the game today, not only in the country, but globally. What they've understood is that you need not look at buildings which can give you more space of efficiency, but at the same time, look at buildings which can give you more satisfaction of the user, the tenant engagement, and automatically that brings in the commercial viability and that gives them returns to the investors. So the vision of the investor has changed. That's more important. And that entire shift in focus is something which I think Blackstone is leading globally today.
That's right. So,
and Nucleus, of course.
Yes, that's right. So what Mr. Pradeep Lala is saying is now the shift, the key takeaways for him is that the role of technology now has increased in terms of, the analytics for the user behavior, their requirements, and also customer satisfaction, which is now driving the commercialization and which is now becoming a big factor for not only the landowners or the commercial office spaces, but the investors as well. So those are the key takeaways for our eminent speakers. What about the future roadmap, Mr. Parvez? Now, what are the future strategies for Nucleus Office Parks going forward from here?
I want to hear that.
So our business model is always in terms of choice, right? We want to make sure that
while he joins back, Mr. Lala, we request you can share with us what are your future roadmaps working with commercial office properties. How are you looking at the future growth for ESPL?
I think it's a great opportunity for companies like us which are growing. Because we have a twofold offering to the market. One is we have our own parent giving us developments on a regular basis, which is adding on to our square footage, not only in terms of revenue and area footage, but at the same time, you want to take Quaiser's question before I answer?
No, sure, very good.
No, we missed out the whole answer because I think you unfortunately.
Yeah, Mr. Parvez, we'll go to you. We'll quickly take your views and then go on to Mr. Lala. So what's the future roadmap for Nucleus Office Parks?
Yeah, so as I was saying, for us, the plan is obviously to make buildings of choices. While I'm sure that there will be options occupier will always have, but our goal is to really stack up at the top of the choice list or the option list for the occupier. And how do we really do that is to make sure that tenant engagement continues to be a big differentiator for us, right? And tenant engagement does not really mean relationship management, but tenant engagement in terms of amenities in the building, providing for what the occupier is really looking at. So that is really number one. Number two, to sort of keep the focus on the health and the well-being considerations of the occupier, because I think that is COVID has caused some of the behavior changes, which to my mind will far outlive the crisis. You will continue to have the same consideration despite the fact that you will have you will probably not have COVID in a foreseeable future.
Right.
And third, as a part of our value system to sort of look out for communities, to be socially aligned and even more environmentally motivated in terms of our ESG attainments in all our initiatives. So I think the three big things which we'll continue to focus on as by far India's largest landlords.
That's fantastic to hear from Mr. Parvez. Mr. Lala, as you were mentioning your roadmap for ESPL, so we'll quickly have that.
So, obviously growth is part of the most important key focus area. But to be very honest with you, we have an advantage over our nearest competitors because we have a twofold offering. One is our own parent organization, wherein we are the owners of the real assets that they have, and we can contribute further. And like I said about bringing improvements in the base build, looking at efficiencies and, doing data and analytics on the entire assets that we have. All these learnings is what we want to pass on to our clients from the open market segment and explain to them and bring them updates on how you can bring in efficiencies and utilities, whatever engagements we are doing across our other portfolio, we can bring in and contribute to our clients and help them enhance the commercial viability of their buildings. And we don't want to limit ourselves only to, janitorial services or, soft services or security services. We again want to go ahead and enhance the entire commercial viability for our clients. And that's what we're looking at. We're looking at more engagement, more partnership, more involvement. And I think that in terms of that, we've also got a team which is, more advisory, whether it's renewable power, green energy, whether it's waste management, bringing in efficiency in all these aspects of technology, technical improvements, all put together. So we don't want to limit ourselves just to the basic manpower services. We want to just increase the whole experience for all our clients. That's more important.
That's it.
And we are working well in that roadmap, and I think we are in the right direction. It's just a matter of time to be visible, more visible in that.
Yes, of course. That there has been a renewed focus on facility services now, which were quite a neglected area till now. And as you, Mr. Lala, as you mentioned, that it is a continuous process of evolving, learning, cross-learning, and engaging with all the stakeholders. As Mr. Parvez said, that it's about there is a new relationship building now between the tenants and the landowners and the occupants. It's no more about commercialization. It's more about humanizing the buildings. It's more about tenant engagement, the occupants engagement, and most importantly, the communities, the social, the well-being of the communities, which ultimately will also drive profits for the companies. So it's all about triple bottom line. Yeah, Mr. Lala.
I'll just add, you said about facilities being neglected. I wouldn't say we were neglected as an industry, but we were not the front runners. This whole last 2-3 years has changed the entire game of the industry, wherein today, I think we are not looked upon as a cost center, but we are looked upon as an enabler to enhance the value of an asset. And from that perspective, I can see that our industry will be sitting in the boardroom with all the people who are looking at commercial viability and bringing in contributions to enhance the whole experience. So the importance of the industry has just been enhanced.
That's right. Mr. Parvez, do you agree to that?
Absolutely, absolutely. The idea was, and as Mr. Lala said it rightly, it was not really a neglected area. It is really a space which has become an enabler of sorts. Today, you can't imagine of talking to an occupier without really appropriate thrust and focus being on the property management services. So I think they have become, not that they were not, but their role has become far more prominent in the whole sort of space of commercial real estate, right? And the whole sort of future-proofing the asset.
That's right. So more from a service provider to an advisory role, as Mr. Lala just mentioned. So fantastic. I think this was a very apt conversation, which we had at the right time. How commercial office spaces are now readying themselves. We have one of the largest portfolio providers for commercial office spaces here with us, with one of the largest facility service provider here with us. And what they have said is that, commercial office spaces now are going fundamental change in their mindsets. The occupiers are going through a fundamental shift in their mindsets. There is an awareness being created by the office space providers themselves, by the facility service providers themselves. And that's a win-win situation, I think, for the workforce, which are now going to come back to offices very soon, I think in full force. But yeah, we are keeping our fingers crossed. So I believe when we talk to a lot of people, they are just ready to go back to offices, get back to that normalcy again. So thank you so much, Mr. Quaiser, Parvez, for sharing your views, sharing the views of a office providers, many of us who are listening, they must be really happy to know what you have just shared with us. And thanks, Mr. Pradeep Lala, for sharing your views and giving us the confidence that yes, we are ready to get back to offices. Thank you so much for being here with us.
I think it's Reality Plus is a great platform for our industry and for the real estate industry, and you really are updated on the changes and the dynamics of our industry, and you take our voice to the entire universe of this client base of our industry. And I must compliment your team and your organization for doing this for us.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Pleasure is all ours. Thanks, Mr. Parvez, for being here with us today.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you, Mr. Pradeep Lala.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye, Quaiser. Thank you.
Bye.